It is 2 in the morning, and the silence of my apartment is being murdered by the vibration of my phone against the glass table. It sounds like a trapped insect, buzzing, desperate, and frantic. I am standing on the balcony, 20 stories up, watching the city lights of New York blur into a sea of gold and obsidian. The air up here is thin and cold, sharp against my skin, but it is nothing compared to the coldness radiating from that screen behind me. Welcome to Black Women's Soul Stories. Before we dive into today's powerful story of betrayal, justice, and the strength to stand alone, please take a moment to subscribe and hit the like button. Your support helps us continue to amplify the voices of women who refuse to remain in the shadows. Now, let's begin. 50 missed calls. 20 from the man I spent 2 decades calling dad. 30 from the woman who birthed me but never quite knew how to be my mother. And a flood of text messages from Lisa, my sister, the golden girl. The one whose name was always spoken with a softness that mine was never afforded. They are not calling because they miss me. They are not calling because they remembered it is my birthday or because they felt a sudden pang of parental affection. They are calling because, for the first time in 10 years, they saw my face. Not in a family photo album, I was never truly in those anyway, but on the national news. The headline running across the bottom of every major network tonight reads, Ammara Brooks appointed as the youngest federal judge in the Southern District. Mr. Roberts, the man whose last name I carried like a heavy backpack until the day I turned 18, is undoubtedly sitting in his recliner right now, his face flushed red, watching the pundits discuss my career. He is seeing the reporters praise my resilience. He is hearing them talk about my background, my rise from poverty, my relentless pursuit of justice, and he is terrified. He is terrified because the world is asking a question he cannot answer without destroying himself. They are asking, where is her family? I take a sip of my coffee. It has gone cold, but I drink it anyway. I let the phone buzz. I let it scream. I have been training for this silence my entire life. To understand why I won't pick up, to understand why a daughter would let her parents suffer while the world watches, you have to understand the house I grew up in. You have to understand that before I was a judge, before I was a lawyer, before I was even a woman, I was a ghost. My story doesn't begin in this penthouse. It begins in a sprawling suburban house in Connecticut with a manicured lawn and a white picket fence that felt more like the bars of a cage. I was 6 years old when I first realized that love was a currency and I was bankrupt. I remember the dinner table vividly. It was a heavy oak table, polished until you could see your reflection in the wood. We had assigned seats. Mr. Roberts sat at the head naturally. My mother sat to his right, shrinking into her chair as if taking up space was an offense. Lisa sat to his left, and I sat at the far end, facing Mr. Roberts. I was a child, but children are observant. They notice patterns before they have the words to describe them. I noticed that when Mr. Roberts served dinner, Lisa's plate was always heaped with the choicest cuts of meat, the freshest vegetables. My mother's plate was modest, and my plate was an afterthought. Eat up, Lisa, he would say, his voice warm like honey melting in tea. You need your strength for ballet tomorrow. A growing girl needs the best. Lisa would beam, her blonde curls bouncing as she nodded, digging into her roast beef with the entitlement of a princess in her own kingdom. She was beautiful, I could never deny that. She had his eyes pale blue, piercing. She had his skin porcelain white, turning a gentle pink in the summer. Then his eyes would slide down the length of the table to me. The warmth would vanish, replaced by a flat, indifferent stare. It wasn't hatred. Hatred implies passion. Hatred implies that you matter enough to evoke a strong emotion. This was worse. It was tolerance. He looked at me the way one looks at a stain on a carpet that they can't quite scrub out, so they just decide to place a piece of furniture over it. "Ammara," he would say, his voice dropping an octave. "Don't slouch and finish your greens, they were expensive." Expensive. That was the word that defined my existence. I was a cost, a liability. An expense on a ledger that Mr. Roberts desperately wanted to balance. For years, I told myself it was just a color thing. I looked in the mirror and saw my dark skin, my coiled hair, my broad nose, and I compared it to Lisa's fairness. I compared it to Mr. Roberts. I looked at my mother, who shared my complexion, and saw how she tiptoed around him, how she swallowed her words before they could leave her throat. I thought, he loves Lisa more because she looks like him. He loves her because she fits the picture. It's a painful thing for a child to believe that their face is the reason they are unloved. But the truth, as I would find out much later, was far more jagged than simple racism. I remember my 10th birthday, double digits. It felt momentous. I woke up with that buzzing excitement in my chest, the kind that makes the air feel electric. I ran downstairs, imagining pancakes, maybe a balloon, maybe a card. The kitchen was empty. On the counter, there was a list of chores. Vacuum the living room, weed the garden, wash the car. I stood there, holding the paper, waiting for the joke to end, waiting for Mom to jump out from the pantry with a smile. But the house was silent. I did the chores. I vacuumed until the lines in the carpet were perfect. I pulled weeds until my fingernails were packed with dirt. I washed Mr. Roberts' pristine sedan until it gleamed in the sun. When they came home that afternoon, they were laughing. Lisa was holding a shopping bag from the mall. Mom looked tired but relieved. Mr. Roberts walked past me as I stood in the hallway, wiping my hands on a rag. "Car looks decent," he muttered, not breaking his stride. "Missed a spot on the rim, though." He walked into his study and closed the door. My mother lingered for a second. She looked at me, her eyes darting toward the study door to make sure it was shut. She reached into her purse and pulled out a candy bar. A single, melted chocolate bar. She pressed it into my hand, her fingers trembling. "Happy birthday, baby," she whispered, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. "Eat it upstairs, don't let him see the wrapper." I looked at the chocolate, then at her. "Where were you guys?" I asked. "Lisa needed new shoes for her recital," Mom said, her gaze shifting away from mine. "And then, well, we lost track of time and grabbed lunch." "You went to lunch?" I asked, my voice small. "It was just a quick bite, Ammara. Don't make a scene." She pulled her hand away. "Please, just go upstairs." I went to my room. I sat on my bed and stared at the candy bar. I didn't eat it. I left it on the nightstand until it went stale. That was the day I stopped asking for things. That was the day I realized that in this house there was a budget for love and it had all been allocated to Lisa. As we got older, the gap didn't just widen, it became a canyon. Lisa's teenage years were a montage of expensive camps, piano lessons, and private tutors. If she got a C in math, Mr. Roberts would hire the best educator in the state to sit with her for hours. "We have to invest in her potential," he would tell my mother over dinner, loud enough for me to hear. "She has a future." When I brought home a report card with straight A's, he would glance at it, grunt, and toss it onto the pile of mail. "Grades are fine, Ammara, but don't get a big head." Academic inflation is real. Those A's don't mean much in the real world for someone like you. Someone like me. He used that phrase like a weapon. Someone like you implies limited options. Someone like you implies a ceiling. The breaking point, the moment the cracks in my heart finally shattered into something sharp, came when I was 17. It was college application season. The house was filled with brochures. Glossy pamphlets featuring smiling students on green lawns. Lisa was a junior, a year behind me, but Mr. Roberts was already touring Ivy League campuses with her. They would go away for weekends, staying in nice hotels, buying university sweatshirts. I stayed home, cooking my own meals, studying until my eyes burned. I had applied to Yale. It was a long shot, I knew that, but I had the grades. I had the extracurriculars, not the expensive ones like ballet, but the ones I could do for free. Debate club, volunteer work at the legal aid clinic. I had written an essay about invisibility, about the power of silence. When the envelope arrived, it was thick. I remember standing by the mailbox, the winter wind biting at my cheeks, holding that packet. My hands shook. I tore it open right there in the driveway. Congratulations, I had gotten in. Not just got in, I had been offered a partial scholarship. But it was Yale. Partial wasn't enough. I still needed help. I walked into the house, the acceptance letter clutched to my chest like a shield. Mr. Roberts was in the living room watching the financial news. Mom was knitting in the corner. I got in, I said. Mr. Roberts didn't look up. Got in where? Yale. The knitting needles stopped clicking. Mom looked up, her eyes wide with a mixture of pride and terror. Mr. Roberts slowly turned his head. He looked at me, then at the letter. He didn't smile. He didn't stand up. He let out a short, dry laugh. Yale, he repeated. That's ambitious. I have a scholarship, I said quickly, stepping forward. It covers half tuition. I can work. I can get a job in the library. I need help with the rest. Please, Dad, it's an investment. I'm going to be a lawyer. He stood up then. He was a tall man, looming and broad. He walked over to me and took the letter from my hand. He scanned it, his face unreadable, then he handed it back. No, he said. The word hung in the air, heavy and absolute. No, I whispered. I said no, I am not paying for this. He turned back to the television. But you just bought Lisa a car, I stammered, the desperation clawing its way up my throat. You're paying for her private tennis coach. You have the money, I know you do. He spun around, his face hardening into stone. Do not count my money, Ammara. That money is for my family. It is for my legacy. I am your family, I screamed. It was the first time I had ever raised my voice at him. I have lived in this house for 12 years. I call you Dad. Why won't you help me? He walked up to me close enough that I could smell his cologne, musk, and expensive tobacco. He leaned down, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. Because it is a bad investment, he hissed. You are reaching too high, Ammara. You need to learn your place. State school is fine for you. Community college is fine for you. But Yale, no. I won't throw good money down a drain. I have to save for Lisa's wedding one day. I have to save for her future. I looked at my mother. I begged her with my eyes, say something. Please, just this once, fight for me. She looked at Mr. Roberts, then she looked down at her knitting. Her fingers started moving again, click, 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 the sound of her cowardice. Mom, I whispered. Listen to your father, Ammara, she said softly, not looking up. We have to be practical. Maybe Yale isn't the right fit. Something inside me died in that moment. The hope, the longing for approval, the desperate wish that if I just achieved enough, I would be worthy of their love, it all turned to ash. I took the letter back. I smoothed out the wrinkles Mr. Roberts had made. Okay, I said, my voice was steady. It surprised even me. Okay, I understand. Good, Mr. Roberts said, sitting back down. Glad we're being realistic. I turned and walked up the stairs. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't cry. I sat at my desk and I made a phone call. Not to a friend, but to the financial aid office. I asked what I needed to do to declare financial independence. I asked how much debt I could take on. I calculated the cost of my soul and I decided it was worth it. I left that house 3 months later. I didn't make a big announcement. I didn't slam doors. I simply waited until they were asleep, packed 2 suitcases, and walked out the front door. I took the bus to New Haven. For the next 10 years, I worked. I worked in diners on the night shift, smelling like grease and old coffee while I studied constitutional law. I worked in the law library, shelving books I couldn't afford to buy. I took out loans that felt suffocating. I ate instant noodles and slept on mattresses that I pulled out of dumpsters. And every time I felt like quitting, every time the exhaustion threatened to pull me under, I heard his voice in my head. A bad investment. Someone like you. I used his doubt as fuel. I burned it to keep myself warm. I saw them occasionally, mostly at obligatory holiday gatherings I felt guilted into attending. I watched Lisa float through life. Mr. Roberts paid for her degree in art history. He paid for her apartment in the city. He paid for her engagement party. They never asked about my cases. They never asked about my debt. When I told them I landed a job at a top firm, Mr. Roberts just nodded and said, "Affirmative action is a powerful thing, isn't it?" I swallowed the insult. I smiled. I played the long game. But the final straw, the moment that led to the empty chairs and the viral video, happened 6 months ago. I was being vetted for the federal judgeship. It is an invasive process. The FBI digs into your past. They interview your neighbors, your kindergarten teachers, your enemies. It is grueling. When I found out I was a finalist, the first thing I wanted to do was tell someone. Despite everything, despite the years of neglect, the child in me still wanted to show them. Look what I did without you. I drove to Connecticut. It was a mistake. The house looked the same. The lawn was still perfect. I walked in and the air was thick with the smell of flowers. Lisa was there. She was getting married in a month. The living room was covered in fabric swatches and cake samples. "Ammara," Lisa chirped, holding up a piece of lace. "What do you think, ivory or cream?" "It's nice," I said. "Where are Mom and Dad?" "In the study, going over the budget." I walked to the study. The door was open. Mr. Roberts was sitting at his desk, calculator in hand. Mom was standing beside him. "The venue is $40,000, Mr. Roberts was saying, wincing. "But it's worth it. It's what she wants." "And the flowers are another 10, Mom added. "We'll make it work," he said. "I'll pull from the retirement fund if I have to. My girl deserves the best day of her life." I knocked on the doorframe. They looked up. "Hi," I said. "Oh, Ammara," Mom said, looking distracted. "We're a bit busy with the wedding planning." "I have news," I said. "Big news," Mr. Roberts sighed, taking off his glasses. "Can it wait? We're trying to figure out how to pay for the orchestra." "I've been nominated for a federal judgeship," I said. The words tumbled out fast. "If I get it, I'll be the youngest judge in the district. It's a lifetime appointment. It's history." I waited for the joy. I waited for the hug. Mr. Roberts looked at me, then looked back at his calculator. "That's nice, Ammara," he said dismissively. "But does it come with a raise? Because public servants don't make real money." "It's not about the money," I said, my voice trembling. "It's a federal judgeship, Dad. The president nominates me." "Well, good luck," he said, turning back to his papers. "Now, Linda, about this catering bill. Do we really need the lobster?" I stood there for a full minute. I watched them debate the price of shellfish while I held the weight of my career in my hands. They didn't even offer me a seat. I turned around and walked out. I walked past Lisa and her lace samples. I walked out the front door and got into my car. I didn't look back. That was the last time I spoke to them face to face. When the official appointment came, I sent the text, the invitation. I knew what the answer would be, but I needed it in writing. I needed the evidence. "We just got back from Hawaii. We're exhausted. We can't make the trip. Besides, it's just a job, Ammara. Rest well." Those 2 words were not a wish for their sleep. They were a eulogy. I was burying the hope that they would ever be the parents I deserved. And now here we are. The phone is still buzzing. The balcony is cold. The coffee is finished. I look at the screen one last time. A text from Lisa pops up. "Dad is hyperventilating. He says people are calling him a monster online. Please, Ammara, just put out a statement. Say we were sick. Say something." I smile. It is a sharp, jagged thing. I turn off the phone. The world knows the verdict now. The empty chairs spoke louder than I ever could. But the real trial, the real confrontation, that is about to happen. Because tomorrow, I am not just a daughter they ignored. I am the judge. And they are about to realize that their jurisdiction over my life has expired. I walk back inside the apartment. I have to sleep. I have court in the morning, and for the first time in my life, I am not worried about what Mr. Roberts thinks. I am only worried about justice. And justice is a dish best served cold. The morning sun does not ask for permission to rise, and neither do I. I woke up at 5, my internal alarm clock more reliable than the digital one on the nightstand. The apartment was quiet, the buzzing of the phone finally silenced by a drained battery. I didn't plug it in. I didn't check the news. I didn't need to see the headlines to know that the storm was raging outside. I could feel the static in the air. I dressed in silence. A crisp white blouse, tailored black trousers, and the robe. The heavy, black silk robe that I had spent 20 years clawing my way toward. When I put it on, looking at myself in the hallway mirror, I didn't see the frightened girl who used to hide candy wrappers in her room. I saw the law, I saw order, I saw consequences. The drive to the courthouse was a blur of gray pavement and steel. I took the private entrance, bypassing the swarm of reporters gathering at the front steps. I could see their vans, their satellite dishes pointing toward the sky like hungry mouths, waiting for a comment, a soundbite, a breakdown. They wouldn't get one. Inside the chambers, the air smelled of old paper and wood polish. It was a smell that grounded me. My clerk, a young man named David with eager eyes, looked at me nervously when I walked in. He had seen the news. He had seen the viral clip of the empty chairs. He opened his mouth to say something, perhaps to offer sympathy, but I raised a hand. "Briefs, David," I said, my voice steady. "What's on the docket?" He blinked, swallowing his words. "Right, Judge Brooks. First up is the sentencing for the fraud case." I nodded. "Good, let's get to work." For the next 8 hours, I was untouchable. In that courtroom, Mr. Roberts didn't exist. Lisa's wedding didn't exist. My mother's silence didn't exist. There was only the prosecution, the defense, and the facts. I listened to arguments. I sustained objections. I delivered rulings. Every time I banged the gavel, the sound echoed through the high-ceilinged room like a heartbeat. Bang. Order, bang. Truth, bang. Justice, it was intoxicating. For the first time in my life, I was the one deciding who was worthy and who was not. I was the one setting the value. But the sun eventually sets and court eventually adjourns. As the shadows lengthened across the floorboards, the adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. I had to go home. I had to go back to the penthouse, to the silence, to the reality I had paused for the day. I drove home slowly. The city was alive with lights, people rushing to dinners, to dates, to families that actually wanted to see them. When I pulled up to my building, the doorman, Henry, opened the car door with a grim expression. "Evening, Judge Brooks," he said, his voice low. I tried to tell them you weren't available, but they refused to leave. They've been in the lobby for an hour." My hands tightened on the steering wheel until my knuckles turned the color of bone. I didn't have to ask who they were. I knew. I could feel their presence like a drop in atmospheric pressure. "It's fine, Henry," I said, stepping out of the car. "I'll handle it." I walked into the lobby. The marble floors gleamed under the chandelier light, and there they were, the trio. They looked out of place against the modern, sleek decor of my building. Mr. Roberts was pacing, his expensive suit looking slightly rumpled, his face a map of agitation. Mom was sitting on one of the velvet waiting chairs, clutching her purse so tightly her fingers were white. And Lisa was standing by the window, scrolling frantically on her phone, her face pale and streaked with what looked like dried tears. They stopped when they saw me. The silence that stretched between us was heavy, thick enough to choke on. I didn't stop walking. I moved toward the elevator, the heels of my shoes clicking rhythmically against the marble. "Ammara." Mr. Roberts' voice boomed through the lobby, echoing off the walls. It was the voice of authority, the voice that used to make me shrink into the carpet. But I didn't shrink. I pressed the call button for the elevator and turned slowly to face them. "You're trespassing," I said. My voice was calm, conversational, as if I were commenting on the weather. Trespassing, Mr. Roberts marched toward me, his finger pointed at my chest. We are your parents. Do you have any idea what you've done? My phone hasn't stopped ringing since yesterday. Clients are canceling contracts. People are calling me a monster on LinkedIn, for God's sake. LinkedIn, imagine that, I said. Actions having consequences. It's a concept we cover in law school. You might have missed that lesson. Stop it. Lisa stepped forward, her voice shrill. This isn't a joke, Ammara. My wedding sponsors are pulling out. The florist canceled this morning because she said she doesn't want to work with a toxic family. You ruined my wedding. Everything was perfect, and you ruined it because you couldn't handle being alone for one day. I looked at my sister, the golden girl. Even now, in the middle of a crisis, her biggest concern was the flowers. I didn't ruin your wedding, Lisa, I said softly. I just didn't hide the truth anymore. There's a difference. We fed you, Mr. Roberts spat, stepping closer, invading my personal space. He smelled of scotch and desperation. We clothed you. We gave you a home when we didn't have to, and this is how you repay us, by publicly humiliating the man who raised you. Raised me, I laughed. It was a cold, humorless sound. You didn't raise me, Mr. Roberts. You tolerated me. You managed me like a bad stock portfolio. I did my best, Mom cried out from the chair. She stood up, her legs shaky. Ammara, please, he loves you. We love you. We were just busy. You know how busy your father gets. I looked at my mother. I looked at the woman who shared my face, my skin, my blood. And for the first time, I didn't feel pity. I felt disgust. Stop lying, Mom, I said. Just stop. You're not protecting him anymore. You're just exposing yourself. You think this is about being busy. You think this is about a trip to Hawaii. It was just a mistake, Mom whispered, tears spilling over. No, I said. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. A mistake is missing a phone call. Ignoring your daughter for 20 years is not a mistake. It's a choice. You chose him. Every single day you chose him over me. I had to keep the peace, she sobbed. I wanted you to have a father figure. A father figure. I turned my gaze back to Mr. Roberts. He was seething, his jaw clenched tight. Is that what you were, a father figure? I was the man who paid the bills, Mr. Roberts shouted. I was the man who put food on the table. Do you know how much you cost me, do you? Here we go, I said, stepping into the elevator as the doors slid open. The ledger, the expense report. He lunged forward, blocking the doors with his hand. The sensors beeped, keeping them open. His face was inches from mine. The mask of the respectable suburban dad was gone. Underneath, there was only ugly, raw resentment. You ungrateful little brat, he hissed. You think you're so high and mighty in that robe? You think you're better than us. You're nothing. You're still just the baggage your mother brought into my house. The lobby went silent. Even Lisa stopped scrolling. What did you say? I asked. My voice was barely a whisper, but it carried more weight than his shouting. He didn't back down. The alcohol and the anger had loosened the lock on the truth he had been keeping for 2 decades. You heard me, he sneered. Baggage. Everyone thinks I'm some racist prick because the internet only sees color. They think I treated you differently because you're black and I'm white. But that's not it, is it, Linda? He looked back at my mother. She buried her face in her hands. Tell her, Linda, he growled. Tell her why I really didn't want to pay for Yale. Tell her why I bought Lisa a car and gave you a bus pass. Dad, stop, Lisa whispered, looking terrified. What are you talking about? He looked at me, his blue eyes cold and triumphant. He wanted to hurt me. He wanted to break the judge and bring back the scared little girl. I didn't pay for you, Ammara, because I don't pay for other men's mistakes, he said, the words dripping with venom. You aren't my daughter, you never were. I married your mother and she came with a side effect. The air left the room. Lisa gasped. What but? Mom said you adopted her. Mom lied, Mr. Roberts cut her off. I never signed adoption papers. Why would I? I wasn't going to put my name on another man's blood. I let you live in my house. I let you eat my food. That was charity. But love, investment, that's for my blood, that's for Lisa." He smiled. It was a cruel, satisfied smile. "So don't stand there and talk to me about justice, Ammara. You got exactly what you were worth to me, nothing." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had defined my worth for my entire life. I waited for the pain. I waited for the tears. I waited to feel broken. But the break didn't come. Instead, I felt a strange, vibrating clarity. The final piece of the puzzle had clicked into place. The stepfather dynamic, the obsession with his legacy, it wasn't just prejudice, it was ego. It was the biological narcissism of a small, weak man. I looked at my mother. She was sobbing quietly, unable to meet my eyes. She had known. All these years, she had known that he looked at me not as a daughter, but as a side effect, and she had stayed. She had let him treat me like a guest in my own home because she was too afraid to be alone. "I know," I said. Mr. Roberts' smile faltered. "What?" I said, "I know." I stood tall, smoothing the front of my blouse. "I've known since I was 12. I heard you talking to your brother in the garage. You said, 'I'll keep the cow, but I'm not raising the calf.'" Mr. Roberts paled. He took a step back. "I knew you weren't my father," I continued, stepping out of the elevator to face him fully. "But I waited 20 years to see if you would ever be a decent human being. I gave you every chance to prove that love was bigger than biology, but you failed. You failed every single time." He stammered, the wind taken out of his sails. "You think this hurts me?" I asked, tilting my head. "You think telling me I'm not your blood is an insult? Mr. Roberts, look at you. You are small. You are petty. You are a man who measures love in receipts. Being related to you would be the greatest tragedy of my life. Knowing that I don't share your DNA, that is the greatest gift you have ever given me." I turned to Lisa. She was staring at her father as if she were seeing a stranger. The golden illusion was cracking. "And you," I said to Mom, "you are the worst of them all. He is a monster, but he's an honest monster. He never pretended to want me. But you pretended to be a mother. You let him starve me of affection because you were too cowardly to leave him. You sacrificed your firstborn for a comfortable life in the suburbs." "Ammara, please," Mom wept, reaching out a hand. "I love you." "No," I said, stepping back. "You love the idea of me. You love the photo ops. But you don't love me. If you loved me, you would have left him the first time he called me a bad investment." I pressed the elevator button again. The doors slid open. This time, Mr. Roberts didn't block them. He looked defeated, shrunken, stripped of his righteous anger. "Go home," I said, stepping inside. "Take your real daughter and go plan her wedding. I'm sure it will be beautiful, just make sure you get the receipts." "Ammara, wait," Lisa cried out, stepping forward. "What are we supposed to tell people?" I looked at her, at the panic in her eyes. She still cared about the optics. She still cared about the audience. "Tell them the truth," I said as the doors began to close. "Tell them that the empty chair wasn't a mistake, it was a verdict." The doors shut, sealing me inside the metal box. I was alone. I listened to the hum of the elevator rising, taking me up, away from them, away from the lobby, away from the past. I leaned my head back against the cool, mirrored wall. I didn't cry. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with air that finally, for the first time in 30 years, felt completely mine. I was fatherless, I was motherless. But as the elevator chimed at the penthouse floor, I realized something else. I was free. The doors of the elevator opened into my penthouse, but I didn't step out immediately. I stood there for a moment, listening to the hum of the machinery, the only sound in a world that had suddenly gone very quiet. When I finally walked into my living room, I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't need to. The city outside was burning with energy, a million artificial stars looking down on me, but for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was looking up at them from a hole in the ground. I was among them. I poured a glass of water and walked to the window. Down below, 20 stories down, the trio was likely getting into a cab or perhaps arguing on the sidewalk. Mr. Roberts would be blaming Mom. Mom would be crying. Lisa would be worrying about her Instagram comments. The cycle would continue, spinning in its toxic orbit, but I had just severed the gravity that held me to them. I slept that night, a deep, dreamless sleep that felt like a coma. When I woke up the next morning, the world had shifted again. I checked my phone, bracing myself for another onslaught of hate mail or pleading texts. But what I found was something different. The internet is a ruthless detective. Someone in the building, perhaps a resident waiting for the elevator, or maybe Henry, the doorman who had listened with a sympathetic ear, had recorded the confrontation in the lobby. The video was everywhere. It was grainy, shot from a distance, but the audio was crystal clear. I didn't pay for you, Ammara, because I don't pay for other men's mistakes. The voice of Mr. Roberts, stripped of his suburban veneer, echoed across social media platforms. The commentary had shifted overnight. The questions about where is the family had been answered. They weren't missing, they were dismissed. Then came the second wave. A thread on Twitter had gone viral, written by a woman named Mrs. Gable, our old next-door neighbor in Connecticut. I lived next to the Roberts family for 15 years, the post read. I used to watch that little girl rake leaves while her sister played inside. I used to see her waiting for the bus in the rain while the father drove the blonde one to school. We all knew. We all saw it, we just never said anything. I'm glad she finally did. The court of public opinion had delivered its verdict. And unlike a court of law, there was no appeal. I went to work. I sat on the bench. I heard cases. I did my job, but in the back of my mind, I waited for the fallout. It didn't take long. 3 days later, I received a voicemail. It wasn't from my parents, it was from Lisa. Her voice sounded wrecked, thick with mucus and tears, unrecognizable from the chirpy, entitled girl who had worried about lace samples. It's off, Ammara, the wedding. Chad's parents called this morning. They said they don't want their family name associated with Dad, with us. The venue canceled, the sponsors pulled out. Dad is losing clients left and right. People are picketing his office. Are you happy? You wanted justice, right? Well, you burned the whole house down. I deleted the voicemail. I didn't feel happiness. Happiness is too light a word. I felt balance. Mr. Roberts had saved every penny for that wedding. He had hoarded his love and his money for a singular event meant to showcase his legacy. And now that legacy was dust. The money was useless. The reputation was gone. It was the ultimate return on his investment, zero. A week passed, then 2. The media cycle moved on as it always does. The reporters left the courthouse steps. The memes about the empty chairs faded. My life returned to a rhythm of quiet, dignified order. I woke up, I judged, I went home, but the silence from Connecticut was different now. It wasn't the silence of neglect. It was the silence of shame. I thought it was over. I truly did. I thought they would retreat into their misery and leave me be. But I underestimated the desperation of people who have lost control of their narrative. It was a Tuesday evening. It was raining, a cold, gray drizzle that slicked the streets of Manhattan. I had just come home and was heating up soup when the buzzer rang. I walked to the intercom. I looked at the camera. It was Mom. And standing behind her, looking older and smaller than I had ever seen him, was Mr. Roberts. They were holding a Tupperware container and a wet umbrella. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the talk button. I could have left them there. I could have let them stand in the rain until they gave up. But there is a part of me, the judicial part, that requires a closing argument, a final statement to the record. I buzzed them up. I didn't unlock the apartment door. I waited until I heard the elevator ding, waited until I heard their footsteps in the hallway. Then I opened the door. I stood in the doorway, blocking the entrance. I didn't invite them in. They looked pathetic. That is the only word for it. Mr. Roberts' suit was ill-fitting, as if he had lost 20 pounds in 2 weeks. His eyes were bloodshot. Mom looked like a ghost, her hair frizzy from the humidity, her hands trembling around the plastic container. Ammara, Mom said, her voice cracking. We brought you some gumbo. I know it used to be your favorite. I looked at the container. I hate gumbo, Mom. Lisa likes gumbo. I'm allergic to shrimp. Mom froze. She looked down at the food, then back at me, her face crumbling. Oh. I forgot. You didn't forget, I said calmly. You never knew. Mr. Roberts cleared his throat. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked desperate. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a terrifying vulnerability. Can we come in? He asked. Please, just for 5 minutes. We need to talk. No, I said. We did the talking in the lobby. Everything else is just noise. I lost the firm, Ammara, he said, his voice breaking. My partners voted me out. They said I'm a liability. The wedding is gone. Lisa isn't speaking to us. We have nothing. You have each other, I said. That's what you always wanted, isn't it? The real family, the biological unit. You have exactly what you paid for. I was wrong, he whispered. He looked up at me and I saw tears in his eyes, real tears. I was wrong, Ammara. I was a fool, I thought. I thought money was the only thing that mattered. I thought blood was the only thing that mattered. But watching you become who you are. I should have been proud. I should have been your father. You should have, I agreed, but you weren't. Mom stepped forward, reaching for my hand. I pulled it back. It's not too late, baby, she pleaded. We can fix this. We can start over. Please, let us be your parents. Let us show up for you now. I looked at them. I looked at the grief etched into their faces, and I realized that they truly believed it. They believed that forgiveness was a transaction, that if they paid enough in tears, I would sell them access to my life. They didn't understand that the currency had changed. You want to show up now? I asked. Now that I'm a federal judge, now that I have power, now that you need me to rehabilitate your image. No, Mom sobbed. Because we love you. Love is a verb, Mom, I said gently. Love is sitting in a cold auditorium for a debate tournament. Love is costing a loan so your daughter doesn't have to work the night shift. Love is defending your child when your husband calls her a bad investment. You didn't do any of those things. I took a breath. The hallway felt very quiet. You say it's not too late, I continued. But you're looking at this like a civil case where you can pay a fine and settle out of court. This isn't civil. It's capital. You killed the relationship. You starved it to death for 20 years. You can't resuscitate a corpse just because you're lonely. Mr. Roberts looked down at his shoes. So that's it, you're just going to close the door. I'm not closing the door to punish you, I said. I'm closing it to protect myself. I have built a bench, Mr. Roberts. A bench made of people who love me without conditions. People who don't check my DNA before deciding if I'm worth their time. There are no empty seats left at my table. I looked at the Tupperware in Mom's hands. Take the gumbo to Lisa, I said. She probably needs it. I began to close the door. Ammara, Mom cried out, one last desperate wail. Please don't do this, we're your family. I paused with the door a few inches from the frame. I looked at them through the crack, a narrow slice of the past that I was finally leaving behind. No, I said, my voice final, ringing like a gavel strike. You're just my relatives, my family showed up. I shut the door, I threw the deadbolt, click. I stood there for a long time, listening. I heard Mom crying. I heard Mr. Roberts murmuring something to her. Eventually, I heard the elevator ding, the doors open, and the doors close. Silence returned. But this time, it wasn't the silence of being ignored. It wasn't the silence of waiting for a car to pull into the driveway, hoping for a scrap of attention. It was the silence of peace. It was the silence of a verdict rendered and a case closed. I walked back to the window. The rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking, revealing the moon hanging over the city. I thought about the empty chair in the courtroom. I thought about the flowers I had placed on it. Some people think an empty chair represents loss. They think it represents a hole in your life. but as I looked out at the skyline, I realized the truth. An empty chair isn't just an absence. It's a reservation. It's a space you keep open for the people who deserve to sit there. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is stand guard over that chair and ensure that the people who refuse to sit in it when it mattered never get to sit in it when it's easy. I turned away from the window and walked into my life. Alone, whole, and finally truly home. Time, I have found, does not heal all wounds, but it does turn them into scars. And scars are useful. They are tough. They have no nerve endings. You can run your fingers over them and remember the pain without feeling the sting. It has been 1 year since I closed that door. 1 year since the rain washed away the last remnants of the family I was born into and watered the roots of the family I chose. Tonight, the penthouse is not silent. The buzzing of that trapped insect phone is gone, replaced by the hum of conversation, the clinking of silverware, and the rich, deep sound of laughter. I am hosting a dinner party. I look around the table. To my left sits David, my clerk. He is no longer the nervous young man who swallowed his words. He is confident, sharp, arguing a point of constitutional law with the woman across from him. That woman is Professor Henderson, the teacher who wrote my recommendation for Yale when Mr. Roberts refused to sign the check. She is 70 now, her hair white as snow, but her eyes still possess that terrifying intelligence. To my right is Mrs. Gable, the neighbor from Connecticut who wrote the tweet that exposed the truth. She reached out 3 months ago just to see how I was doing. We talk every Sunday now. She tells me about her garden, I tell her about my docket. She brings me apple pie, she never asks for a favor. There are 8 people at this table. None of them share my last name. None of them share my DNA. But when I look at them, I don't see an expense. I don't see a liability, I see my bench. The world moved on, as it always does. The viral video is now just a footnote in the internet's long memory. But the consequences for the Roberts family were not so fleeting. I hear things, through the grapevine of the legal community. I hear that Mr. Roberts filed for bankruptcy 6 months ago. The firm he loved more than his stepdaughter dissolved, his partners unwilling to sink with a captain who had become a public pariah. He is retired now, living in a smaller house, stripped of the status that was his only religion. I hear that Lisa's engagement was never rekindled. She moved to the city, trying to start over, but the internet has a long memory for faces that sneer. She is working in retail now. I imagine she stands on her feet all day, just like I used to in the diner. I wonder if her feet hurt. I wonder if she understands now that expensive shoes do not protect you from the hard ground. And Mom. Mom sends a letter on the 1st of every month. I recognize the handwriting on the envelope. Looping, hesitant, I don't open them. I don't burn them either. I simply place them in a box in the back of my closet. Perhaps one day, years from now, I will have the indifference to read them. But not today. Today, I am still protecting the girl who waited for a birthday cake that never came. David taps his glass with a spoon, drawing the room's attention. A toast, he says, standing up. To Judge Brooks for surviving the hardest year of her life and coming out with her robe spotless. To the judge, everyone choruses, I raise my glass. To the bench, I correct them softly. To the people who sit with you when the verdict comes down, we drink. The wine is warm and complex. It tastes like victory. Later, after the guests have left and the dishwasher is humming its rhythmic lullaby, I step out onto the balcony again. The city is the same, gold and obsidian, vast and indifferent. But I am different. I think about the thousands of people who watched my story unfold. I think about the messages I still receive from strangers. Messages from stepchildren who felt like outsiders in their own homes. Messages from Black girls who were told they were too loud, or too dark, or too ambitious. Messages from anyone who ever looked at an empty chair and felt like a failure. If I could speak to them now, not as a judge, but as Ammara, I would tell them this. We are taught that family is a default setting. We are taught that we must endure toxicity because of shared blood. We are told to keep the peace, to swallow the insults, to wait for the love we are owed. But love is not a debt. It cannot be collected. Mr. Roberts was right about one thing. I was a bad investment for him. He wanted a return in status, in ego, in compliance. I gave him none of those things. I gave him the truth, but for myself. I was the best investment I ever made. Every late night in the library, every skipped meal, every lonely holiday, it was a deposit into an account that no one can freeze. I look down at my hands. They are steady. I am Ammara Brooks. I am a federal judge. I am a daughter of no one and a sister to those who show up. The air is cold, but I am not. I turn back to the warmth of my apartment, leaving the city lights to shine on the millions of other stories unfolding in the dark. I slide the glass door shut. Thank you for listening to The Silent Verdict. Ammara Brooks' journey serves as a powerful reminder that while we cannot choose the house we are born into, we have the absolute right to build the home we live in. Her story proves that blood may be biological, but family is architectural. It is something you build, board by board, with the people who stand by you when the rain comes. Now I turn the floor over to you. The jury is out, and we want to hear your verdict. Have you ever had to leave a chair empty to find your own peace? Or have you found your bench in unexpected places, in a neighbor, a teacher, or a friend who became family? Share your story in the comments below. Whether you are still in the shadow or standing in your own light, your story matters here. If this story moved you, please hit the like button. It helps these stories find the people who need to hear them the most. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. You never know when the next verdict will be read. Until next time, case closed.